Hello everyone, what's going on? This is the final campaign in the final scenario in the Joan of Arc campaign. It's called A Perfect Martyr, which is arguably the longest and most difficult scenario. It's definitely the longest one in this campaign, but difficult. You could definitely make a case for the previous scenario, which is the Siege of Paris. I would definitely make a case of that. If you watched my video on the Siege of Paris, I had a bit of difficulties with that scenario. Anyway, when you first start out, you don't have any resources, and you might think, oh shit, what am I going to do? But, in fact, what you have to do is break into the Burgundian base and destroy their town center, and once you do that, they will pay you resources. Not quite sure why. Anyway, you will have to destroy the Burgundian base. They have quite a few amount of crossbowmen inside, so just be aware of that, because the crossbowmen will make a beeline for your bombard cannons. Your bombard cannons are incredibly useful for taking out the towers inside the Burgundian base, because they are very tower happy and like to build tons of them. So make sure those towers don't destroy your villagers. There's also a castle in there. You can use either bombard cannons or your trebuchets to take those out. Anyways, once you've cleared out your base of all enemies, start building up some houses with your villagers, because you can't make any villagers until you start building some houses, because that's just the wonderful way that this scenario was created. And once you get some houses up, you really want to start working on your economy. I would highly recommend starting off your initial villagers, cutting some wood, and then all the villages you create, just make farms with them. There's also a few berries that you can harvest just to save a little bit of wood in the first part. Although berries are pretty slow, so just be aware of that. I would clear them out anyway, because you also clear some room for making farms in your base. This base is pretty small and cramped, so you're not going to be able to make a whole lot of buildings unless you expand a little outside of your base and think outside your boundaries. There are 3 enemies on this map which will constantly harass you the entire scenario. There's the British, which is the red player. They're by far the most heavily fortified. This is just me scouting out the British encampment, which we're going to need to break into later in the scenario to win. There's a ton of bombard cannons, a ton of longbowmen, a ton of onagers. They also make a lot of cavaliers as well. That's what you're going to be up against. The best plan of attack is just making lots of paladins. That's what I went for. And no more messing around with rams. I have always used rams in all of the previous scenarios, but finally the Franks get gunpowder, so you can make bombard cannons in this scenario, which are incredibly useful, and I would highly recommend building only them siege weapon wise. Don't even fool around with rams. There's no point. Bombard cannons are way better. There's also Shrewsbury, which is the orange player, which is by far the most annoying of this your enemies rating wise. I would recommend to take them out, because if you don't, they will send a constant stream of cavaliers and capped rams to harass you. So if you're okay with that sort of thing, you can just let them live if you wish to do so. I chose to take them out because that's just the easier thing to do. Also, make sure to upgrade everything. You want to get up to Paladin as soon as possible so you can start pumping out Paladins. Also, you don't start out in the Imperial Age. You have to research that. Just be aware of that. Keep that in the back of your mind. But it's not that big of a deal, researching the Imperial Age. It doesn't take that long to do. Anyway, you also start with a very large stone pile in your base. I'm not exactly sure how much stone you start with, but it's about enough to build 5 or 6 castles. Of course, keeping in mind that Frankish castles are cheaper than all other civilizations, but still, it's really nice. I believe I built 4 castles and spent the rest on upgrades and building walls and that sort of thing. But you can build, I believe, 1 more castle if you don't spend money on upgrades and building walls. So that is very nice. The castles are going to prove extremely useful to kill the Shrewsbury cavaliers that they will send at you. Just be aware that the Shrewsbury rams are going to knock through your walls if you try to wall up against them. So really your best plan of attack is just to have a castle or 2 and then kill off your rams with your paladins or knights or cavaliers if you haven't researched that yet. The British will also send a few cannon galleons, but since the cannon galleons are really stupid, they'll be up right against the shore and you can kill them with your paladins. Anyway, this is a bit later on when I have been defending my base for a while and I've researched Paladin and all the blacksmith upgrades, and I'm ready to start my first offensive. So there are a couple onagers as well as some cavaliers and longbowmen just across the stream, and as well as 2 keeps. The keeps aren't that dangerous since the paladins are pretty beefy units, so you can kill them relatively easily with either your paladins or with your bombard cannons. I believe I killed one keep with my paladins and 1 with my bombard cannons. Paladins are actually pretty good against against keeps and all buildings. They're just pretty good against everything. They're just one of the best units in the game, in my opinion. So there's also quite a few bombard cannons just scattered around the countryside. I would recommend to take those out, because later in the scenario you're going to have to take a very delicate trade cart to a hill that's covered in flags. And basically, this trade cart can be killed extremely easily, and it's also not very fast. So you want to make sure there's absolutely no danger of it dying, because otherwise, if it does die and you forgot to save, you're screwed, and it's not my fault, it's your fault. Anyway, I decided to attack with my bombard cannons, attack their bombard towers, because for whatever awesome logic, bombard cannons have a longer range than towers, even though the towers are cannons that are really high in the air. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but hey, it's pretty cool. So, yeah, you want to take out those towers. I was a bit careless and let my bombard cannon die. This is the part where I decided to take out Shrewsbury because they were pissing me off. And look at all those rams. They were just going crazy when it came to rams, and that's a lot of wood and gold that I'm destroying right there. So I was pretty happy about that. Shrewsbury is not very hard to destroy. They have a really small base. They have one castle, a town center. They have quite a few siege workshops and stables that they just pump out a constant stream of rams and cavaliers from. But once they run out of gold, they will start making light cavalry, which is much easier to deal with, and your castle can just pretty much take care of them once they run out of gold. So you don't even technically have to destroy them. I just decided to because they're pissing me off. So anyway, I did eventually defeat Shrewsbury. They were trying to evade my knights for a while, and they ran villagers around. But eventually I killed off the last of their villagers, and they were defeated. So that was good news. And next, it's time to focus on the British. There's no point in focusing on Burgundy because all they create is champions and pikemen anyway, so they're really not that dangerous. Your castle can deal with them. And here I am finally trying to take out the British. And one thing to keep in mind is if you attack with your bombard cannons, even if you're only attacking like a gate or a wall, before you attack with your paladins, the British Cavaliers will make a beeline for your bombard cannons. There's really not a whole lot you can do about it, other than just let your bombard cannons die. So what I would recommend to do is send in a few light cavalry, or your paladins if you choose, to attack their villagers, collecting the wood, and then all the cavaliers will focus on your paladins and light cavalry, or whatever you're choosing to create, and then your bombard cannons can just mow down their gates and towers in peace. And yeah, anyways, also something that's pretty useful is either to make some monks or to garrison your units inside your castles, which will take a bit longer, but it's important to keep your units alive because gold is limited on this map. Later on in the scenario, I ended up having to sell pretty much all of my food and wood for gold because I didn't have any left. And also the Shrewsbury encampment, unfortunately, if you attack it a bit earlier, you might be able to steal some of their gold, but their gold was all mined out by the time I got there. So, the British will send a ton of cavaliers at you, and also a few heavy scorpions, lots of longbowmen. The longbowmen aren't that much of a problem, since you have paladins, and paladins are pretty beefy. But what I actually did is, after my initial 2 waves of paladins were killed, what I did is I just had a constant stream of light cavalry. I would group up about 20 light cavalry or so, and then start attacking their villagers, and their cavaliers would come out and pretty much kill my light cavalry extremely quickly. But what I did is I did that about 5 to 6 times, and eventually I mopped up most of their more expensive gold units, such as cavaliers and scorpions, with my light cavalry, so I wasn't spending a whole lot of resources. And once the British run out of gold, they won't make any more units at all, really. Even though technically they could make light cavalry, they don't, because I guess they're just coded to make only paladins and scorpions. This part was kind of funny. The Burgundians broke into my base, and I guess they could have wreaked some havoc, but no, they just decided to go back to attacking my wall. I guess apparently that's more fun for them. So what I did is I walled the Burgundians out of my base. I just made a wall around them, and they were trapped out there attacking my wall. Yeah, so you have to be aware that that was the mistake I made. If you chop wood at that side, eventually your villagers will break through to the other side, and the Burgundians will be able to come in through the back of your base. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And this is much later. Many unit deaths later. At the end of the scenario, I had over 1,000 unit kills, which is a lot. So as you can tell, there's a lot of fighting in this scenario. But this is a bit later. I cut out most of the fighting because it just dragged on for a long time. And at this point, this was my final attack once the British had run out of gold, and I made a few last-ditch paladins and bomber cannons. And once you destroy this bomber tower, you can move the trade cart onto the hill in safety, and there you go. That is the end of the scenario. So thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you appreciated the longer video, and stay tuned for more. Farewell.